Hey y'all. So we are gonna talk about barbecue today. A lot of people over the years always text me and call me whenever they are trying to make barbecue at home, trying to ask for tips, troubleshoot problems and stuff like that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start putting it in some videos for you all, as well as, you know, talking about how we use Avec 2 in applications such as barbecue. If you look at the label, it says a perfectly balanced Louisiana spice, rub, and blackening seasoning. And keyword there is rub. That's exactly what we're looking for here. Avec 2 works as an incredible rub for barbecue. And what we mean by rub is basically, in this instance, something that we can put on as seasoning before we cook the barbecue, as opposed to, like, if we were doing a dry rub on a rib, we might apply that after we cook the barbecue. Avec 2 works well in that application as well. For pork shoulder, which is what we're doing today, we got bone in. You got to make sure to get it bone in when you're doing it for barbecue. And I love pork shoulder, and especially if you're new to barbecue or just starting out or trying to figure it out, pork shoulder is very forgiving. There's so much fat. It's harder to mess up than, say, a brisket or ribs or something like that. So I think it's a great place to start, and it's delicious. Another thing about barbecue that I'll say, and this kind of gets into some, I guess, regional debates. You know, where I'm from, I grew up in Georgia and Arkansas, and I've lived in Tennessee for 10 years now. I lived in Louisiana for a little bit. But in Tennessee, Arkansas, and maybe Georgia, if you say barbecue, and this is South Carolina and North Carolina too, if you say barbecue, you mean pulled pork or maybe chopped pork, depending on where you're at. They're synonymous. Pulled pork or pork shoulder, pork butt, whole hog, you know, whatever pork, slow cooked pork you're talking about, that is what barbecue means. It's not necessarily a broad term that you would just apply to anything. In Texas, they would call brisket barbecue, but in Arkansas or somewhere, they would definitely refer to it as I'm making brisket. If you told somebody, hey, let's get a barbecue sandwich, or I'm having barbecue sandwiches, and you were in North Carolina and they showed up and you had brisket, they would be confused. I thought you said you were having barbecue sandwiches. So barbecue is pulled pork to people where I'm from. So I'm open to interpretation, and I love Texas barbecue too. But today we're making barbecue. Also, I want to talk about, get back to what I was saying about rub versus, you know, say, you know, a seasoning or something like that. For a rub, it can't be too salty, right? Because you need to be able to use a lot of it. So the reason Avec 2 is so great as a rub for barbecue is because there's a lower amount of salt in it compared to some other Louisiana spices that you might have seen in your grocery store. You could not use some of those as a rub for barbecue. It would blow everything out of the water with salt, and you want to be able to use a lot of it, especially on a pork shoulder, right? I'm going to cover this thing in seasoning, and it's going to be delicious. It's going to caramelize. It's going to make a great bark. So make sure that if you're not using Avec 2, make sure you're getting a rub and not a seasoning. I'm going to do, and you don't have to do this, I like to do some yellow mustard to make the rub stick on the outside. You could do hot sauce. You could do, you know, apple cider vinegar. You could do regular vinegar. I like mustard. I like the way it's, you know, less liquidy than a hot sauce or apple cider vinegar or something. And I just think the way it makes the rub stick is super nice, kind of thick, and really holds it on there. So I'm just gonna rub this whole thing down. I don't think the mustard is necessarily doing anything for the flavor necessarily. You're gonna lose that throughout the cook, so it's not gonna taste like mustard. I just think it's a nice way to get the rub to stick, and I just like the way it looks. So, but you could do whatever you wanted. You could even do nothing, but I like that. Do not be scared to really lay it on with the Avec 2 on the pork shoulder. We're gonna cover this whole thing like it's gonna be so just beautiful and Avec Tous. So just kind of try to get a rhythm. You want to make sure it's even. That's really good. And then on the sides, you can just kind of hold your hand around, just like that, and it'll kind of catch it and help you get it on the sides. That way you don't have to be trying to like flip the port shoulder around a bunch and hold it up in weird angles. You can just get it all just like that. I'm gonna flip over. Get the top side, the fat side here. There we go. That's amazing. So I use, you know, a little more than half of a whole bottle right there. Probably 3/4 of a bottle of Avec Tous. And that's gonna be perfect. It's not gonna be too salty. It's gonna be absolutely delicious. And man, that is it. We are ready to put this thing on the smoker. My smoker is hot. We'll go over here and talk about it, and I'll show you kind of where I place it and how in this particular smoker we can do it, and we can talk about some other smokers too. So, okay, so we got our port shoulder seasoned, rubbed down, and ready to go on our smoker. I'm gonna tell you a little bit what I'm working with here. And how things might be different depending on what what kind of smoker you're having. You have in your backyard. This is an old country barbecue pit. It's the Pecos. It's a really good heavy duty backyard pit that's relatively affordable. They're roughly $400 brand new. I found this one on Facebook Marketplace for a couple $100. It's a really incredible deal. They have different models that, you know, get a little higher grade, you know, a little thicker metal, bigger cooking areas and stuff that go up, you know, I think up to maybe around $1,000. But I've had really good luck with this one as far as a backyard smoker goes. You know, if you're super serious about barbecue, then, you know, maybe you want to spend a little more money. I think that for the money and for what you're probably going to be doing, if you just invest in trying to find a used old country or maybe even an Oklahoma Joe on Facebook Marketplace, you're gonna have a really good time making barbecue. I would not recommend going for what people call the cheap offset smokers that you might see at Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that. They're super thin metal. Basically, if you have to bring it home and screw it together and stuff, and you're attaching the firebox on your own in the smokestack, and you can just tell it's thin, it's like not heavy when you try to lift it up, that's no good. You're not gonna have fun making barbecue. You're not gonna get very far with it. You're gonna have too difficult a time of maintaining your temperature. You'd be better off just using a Weber grill and using charcoal and doing barbecue that way. So if you're looking for offset stick burner, as they call it, which means I have a firebox over here and I have actual logs of wood that I'm burning live fire in to create smoke. If you're looking for an offset stick burner, try to spend just a little more money and get something that's actually gonna be efficient cooking and not gonna make you wanna, you know, throw your barbecue in the trash or something. I don't know. Whatever you do when you get frustrated with barbecue. I already have my smoker up to temp. One thing you should know, I'm using oak and hickory wood. I get my fire going by doing some charcoal first, you know, just in the chimney starter here. I had royal oak today, so I get that going. I dump it in my firebox, and then I load my wood on top of that to build my fire. Instead of just trying to build it from scratch in the firebox. The best way to start a fire for your barbecue pit is you use the one that's already started. I've got my smoker up to about 275, which is where I like to smoke most of my barbecue. I know a lot of people talk low and slow. That's still a low temperature, but I think like 225, 250 even for me, for pork shoulder and for things like brisket and ribs, it's just too low for me. I like to move things along. It's not about impatience. I think it develops a nicer bark. Like if you go to Texas, a lot of those places, they're cooking barbecue in between 275 and 350, some of them up to 400 degrees. It's pretty crazy. So low and slow is a little bit, it's kind of a myth that that's the only way to get it done. Some people think that 275 sounds really high. In my opinion, it's perfect. I'm going to start at about 275. I might even finish up around 300 to 325 on this after I wrap my pork here in a few hours. But you should know, if you're using oak and hickory and trying to get a real fire going in a firebox like this, it can take about an hour to get up to temp. So when I woke up this morning, first thing I did was come out here and get my fire started, and then I started tending to whatever I needed to do to get the meat ready, because I want this to be ready whenever my meat is ready to go, so I'm not having to sit around and waste time hoping that my fire gets up to where I need to be. So we're gonna take a look in here, lift it up, and you can see we got good smoke going. I got a pull-out grill grate, and it's just a single layer. I don't have a top grill grate. I like just the single because it's just easier to kind of keep up with where the temp is across the grate. If you have multiple levels, you're gonna have different temperatures down here as opposed to up high. I am gonna go fat side up here, and I'm gonna go the thickest part of the pork shoulder with the bone sticking out kind of at the back. I'm gonna have that facing my fire and do it this way because I just want the smoke to kind of flow across the whole thing and have I got like a point here at the end. That'll be farthest away from the fire because I don't want to burn that up. So go right there. That's it. We're making barbecue now. So we're gonna close this bad boy up, and we're gonna cook that until I start to get a nice bark on there. Once I start to develop a good bark and it's looking real nice, I am gonna wrap it, and that's how we're gonna finish it up. I do not cook pork shoulder to temp, so I'm not gonna probe this with a thermometer. I am all looking for feel here, and that's something I want to kind of communicate to everyone and maybe help you learn how to do, is that you're just looking to be able to pull that bone out, right? And you'll get to a point where you can tell, like if you have it wrapped in foil, you can poke at it and you're gonna start to feel it just be kind of soft, and like it's gonna start giving into your finger as you're poking at it. And you'll know you're getting close to where you're gonna be able to pull that bone out. So I do not bother with a thermometer on this. I do temp briskets, but even with briskets, I'm still looking for feel and not necessarily temp. So that, different people do it different ways. Some people heavily monitor, their temperatures, and that's all they go off of. I think it's really important to learn how to feel what you're actually looking for, because the temperature, it could be the right temp that you want it to be, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be ready to go. Barbecue is fickle. It's not an exact science every time. Every piece of meat is a little different. Every cook is a little different because you don't know what's going on in your smoker that day, or how things might be acting different, or the weather or the temperature outside. That all affects it. So if you're doing a stick burner like this, an offset smoker, and the biggest thing I always say about barbecue, you just have to really pay attention and you have to care. I get more satisfaction out of having to keep up with keeping the fire and all that, even than I do eating it. The craft of just kind of making the barbecue and using that live fire to cook it is what really gets me going. If you're using a Traeger or something like that, that's totally fine. Follow those instructions however you're supposed to cook your barbecue on those. I don't know, because I've never used a Traeger, but you can set it to 275 and you can set it to uptick the temperature as you go on if you want to finish hotter like the way I do. You can recreate the same experience, so without all the legwork that I'm having to do. If you were doing this on a Weber, same thing. You can maintain temperature. I've cooked pork shoulders on a Weber. You can maintain your temperature with just adding coals throughout the process. You could do the snake method, where you just have coals set up that they just keep lighting each other on fire as they're touching. There's a lot of different ways to do it. This is my favorite way to make barbecue, on an offset smoker. or on my hog pit back there. If we had a whole hog, one day we'll do that. So we're gonna let this baby cook, and we will come check on it in a few hours and see how we're looking. Here we are back at the pit. I've had this port shoulder on here for about 5.5 hours, I think. And we're gonna check it out. I've not really been opening this at all, just checking on it every once in a while, but there's you know, old phrase, if you're looking, you ain't cooking, and every time you open this, you're gonna let some heat out. When I know I'm gonna open it to do anything, I'll try to always throw another log on just to kind of keep that heat rolling, so that whenever I go back to shut it and keep cooking, I'm ready to go again. But yep, let's take a look and see where we're at. Been maintaining good heat here. Woo, baby. All right, so it's looking really good. I got a nice bark going, nice color. I'm gonna grab it. One thing, definitely make sure, don't ever use tongs to mess around with your port shoulder or brisket or anything. You don't want to damage the bark. Ribs are a little more forgiving if you want to use some tongs on the end of it to check them. I'll just use my hands. I've worked in restaurants and stuff. I'm not that sensitive to heat on my fingertips, but I'll usually just use a towel and do it that way. So I find that to be the best way to maintain the quality of the bark. But I'm gonna pull this over here just so you can see it up close. As you can see, we've got some really nice color going on here. I'm really happy with how this is looking. This is quite frankly just perfect. So we're gonna wrap this now. The pork shoulder, when you're cooking it, or any meat, it's pretty easy to get it up to 130, 145, like in that range quickly. Once you start getting in the 150 to 160 range, or somewhere around there, maybe a little over 160, you can hit what's called the stall, and that's where it just it kind of everything just kind of tightens up, and it doesn't want to keep going and doesn't want to push past that temperature there. Because really, to get this to where you can shred it, you're looking to get well over 200 degrees. Briskets, I'll take anywhere from 203 to 206 to be able to slice nice. If you want something to shred and be like fork tender, like where you can just pull it off with a fork, it's gonna have to be higher than that. So I know I said I don't temp my pork shoulders, but I just wanted to show you just so you can have an idea of where we're at in the cook process. So now wrapping it is gonna accelerate that process. We have a good bark. Even with wrapping it, we're gonna continue to get a nice bark on this. So here we go, we're gonna wrap it. I'm gonna show you how I do that. You wanna get some heavy duty foil. Pull out my grill grate here a little bit and wrap it on this side. I usually do 2 layers, just because as this cooks more and more, the bone will start to be more exposed, and I just wanna make sure that the bone doesn't puncture through the foil and let out the juices. I want to keep everything in there that I can. Go right here, straight on there, and then you're just going to try to wrap it real tight. Fold up all the foil around it. So now sometimes at this point, I've had fat side up the whole time. I'll just go ahead and go fat side down, and I'm going to put it on this side of the cooker now. My tuning plate, I didn't talk about it earlier, but I'm deflecting some of the heat away from right by the firebox to push it down this way to kind of control how hot everything is, to make sure it don't get too hot right by the firebox. I'm going to move my pork shoulder over to the other side of there, and let a little more of that direct heat actually come up into it. I have the fat side down now, so that'll protect it pretty good. And this is going to be in here for probably a couple more hours at least. And then after that, we'll do a rest. But yep, that was easy. Barbecue is really easy. I actually believe that. It's really just about attention and just doing a few things correctly to make sure you get a good product. Temperature control, checking your meat, making sure it's doing what you want it to do, and then knowing when it's done, and that's it. And then obviously, good flavor on the meat. So, all right, give this a couple more hours. We'll come back and we will check it out and see how it is. All right, we're about 8.5 hours into this cook on this pork shoulder. I've been keeping an eye on it, checking it out, and I think we're good to go. So what I'm talking about with this feel thing, I had to put a little extra foil on here because I had a rip earlier. Go ahead and pull that off. So basically what I'm talking about, there's just kind of a, when you push in on it, you just want to feel some give, and you can just tell that it's tender by just pushing in on it like that. You know, where if it still had time to cook until it was going to be able to get pulled, it would just really resist your push of your finger. So I can tell by this that it's got a good bounce to it, that it's ready to be pulled. So we'll pull it out here, uncover it, very hot steam, and I'm just going to pour it onto my pan here. Ooh, hot. And I'm going to pull this bone out to show you what you're looking for. There we go. Bone pulls out completely clean, easy, no effort basically whatsoever. And this pork is tender. It's ready to go. So now what I will do, oh, you guys see it here. So there is our finished pork shoulder. You see we got nice bark, nice color. It is tender. It is going to be delicious. And I'm going to let this rest for just about 30 minutes because I got people that are ready to eat. Ideally, I would actually cover this back up with foil. I might throw it in a cooler and just let it rest for a couple hours. Whenever I was running my barbecue truck a couple years ago, sometimes I would let pork and briskets rest for 2 to 4 to 6 hours, just in a cooler, wrapped up in a towel. It just gets better to me the longer that it rests. But 30 minutes is, for your backyard, for having people over, having a party, is gonna be fine. So I'm gonna let this thing rest, just loosely covered here in the foil on this pan next to the cooker. Still got some heat coming off of it, so it'll stay warm enough. You're gonna be good to go. And then 30 minutes, I'm just gonna shred it. You can use tongs, you can use forks, you can use claws, whatever you want. At the end of the video, I'll put some pictures of the sandwich that I put together. And to me, a barbecue pork sandwich, or a barbecue sandwich as we talked about, because that's what barbecue is, you gotta have slaw and some sauce. And I use Martin's potato buns. Those are my favorite buns. I use a slaw for this one. I'm going to use a slaw that is mayo based. I like vinegar slaws too. I like to do a chopped pork with a vinegar sauce, Carolina style. Today we're just going Tennessee style. We got a ketchup, tomato based sauce, which is about roughly 2 to 1 ketchup to vinegar. It's got brown sugar. It's got Worcestershire sauce in it. It's got some Avec in it and some other things. So it's going to be delicious. And yeah, that is your basic process. I tried to just keep this as simple as I could to show you the most basic way you could do it, like without all the water pans, without using temperature gauges and all this stuff you'll read on a lot of meat smoking forums. And a lot of those people kind of tend to come from these worlds of competition barbecue, or they aspire to that. That's not really where, I'm not really that interested in that. You know, I've sold tens of thousands of dollars worth of barbecue in my life, and I've never used a water pan. I never tempt my porks, with a thermometer to see when they're done. I do everything by feel. I do everything super, super simple, and it's turned out great, and I've always had good results. And yeah, so the reason for that is just paying attention. Kept my fire all day, 9 hours of working this fire. Kept up good heat in here. It was a good smoke today. So Avec 2 is absolutely incredible as a rub on this pork. Even when I pull it, I'm gonna hit it with a little more on there, just to kick it up a little bit as you're eating it and serving it. It's just an incredible rub, and we got a beautiful bark from it, and it's amazing flavor. You can see that I just pulled off a little piece there. Man, you don't need no sauce. That's it right there. That's good barbecue. All right, thank you all for watching. Be looking out. I'm gonna make a lot more videos around barbecue. These deep dives, kind of really digging in and telling you my thought process and my process for making it. We'll do brisket, we'll do ribs, we'll do chicken, we'll do sausages, we'll do all sorts of stuff. We'll do a lot of outdoor cooking, grilling, rotisserie, a lot of cool stuff that's going to go a little deeper than these 60 to 90 second videos you'll see pop up on Instagram. That's just a quick kind of letting you see, you know, kind of food pornish. I want to go deep for you guys and show you exactly how I do everything. Leave any questions in the comments. I will answer all of them basically. So that's what I live for now. So anyway, thank y'all for watching. Hope you enjoy barbecue if you make it the way I did.